Chapter 14. Are you certain, Zistalmu said, that you know exactly what you're supposed to do? Aralani drew in a deep breath, pulling with it every bit of patience her mind and body could muster. Yes, Syndic, she said. I think we've been over it enough times. Because I'm serious, he went on, as if he hadn't heard her, or more likely didn't believe her. If either the Garwians or the Vax refuse to give him up or deny knowing anything about him, we turn the ship around and go home. "You understand," Aralani said, which wasn't to say that she agreed with him, or that she had any intention of following such a ridiculous order. Defying an aristocrat syndic could mean the end of her career, of course, but she'd put her career on the line so many times before that it was almost becoming routine. What wasn't routine was why Zistalmu and Thurfian both seemed so single-mindedly determined to destroy Thrawn. She'd been mulling over that question since their departure from the Ascendancy, and she was no closer to figuring it out now than she had been then. Maybe it was time she did something about that. She looked over at the navigator's station. Cherry was sitting there, her breathing slow and steady, deep in third sight, as she guided them toward Premia. Standing beside her was Zistalmu's wife, who'd never offered Aralani her proper name, but had instead insisted that everyone aboard call her Nana. A rather annoying affectation, in Aralani's opinion. Possibly why the woman had only lasted 2 years as a caregiver. But right now all that mattered was that for the next minute neither she nor anyone else was in position to listen in. "A question, Syndic," Aralani said as Zistalmu started to turn away. "For my own curiosity." "Yes?" She turned her full gaze on him. "Why do you and Syndic Thurfian hate Thrawn so much?" She'd expected some kind of reaction from him. To her surprise, his expression didn't even twitch. "About time," he said calmly. "I've been expecting you to bring up that topic since we left Scylla." "Sorry, I've had other things on my mind," Aralani said. "May I have an answer?" "First, ask the correct question," Zistalmu said. "We don't hate Thrawn. Actually, we both admire his military skill. We resist him because he's a threat to the Ascendancy." "To the Ascendancy?" Aralani countered. "Or to the Arizi family?" Zistalmu shook his head. "You really don't see it, do you? In that case, there's no point in continuing this conversation." "Excuse me, Syndic, but there's every reason to continue," Aralani said. "You're aboard the Vigilant, under my authority, and you're obligated to answer any reasonable question and obey any reasonable order. Unless you plan to invoke official Syndicure secrets, and I will follow through on that if you try it, you'll tell me how Thrawn is a threat to the Ascendancy." Octramo called a warning from the helm. "Break out in 30 seconds, Admiral." "Acknowledged." Aralani raised her eyebrows towards Zistalmu. "Talk fast." "There's no time for a proper explanation," the Syndic said. "But really, you don't need one. You've seen enough of Thrawn and his career to understand. If you don't, it's because you choose not to." Aralani shook her head. "Not good enough. It's all you're going to get." Zistalmu nodded toward the viewport. "And we're here." Aralani turned to see the hyperspace swirl collapse into star flares and then into stars. Looming directly ahead was a half-lit planet with dozens of ships of all sizes moving in or out, or simply drifting steadily along in their orbits. "Premia, Admiral," Octrimo announced. "I read 47 visible ships," Senior Commander Bikelian added from the sensor station, checking configurations for anything that looks Garwian. "Acknowledged," Aralani said. "Senior Captain Wutru, a signal to the Planetary Diplomatic Office. Identify us, and tell them we're trying to reach Artistic Master Sforno." "Yes, Admiral," Wutru said. She leaned over the comm officer's shoulder and began speaking quietly. "I'm not picking up anything that looks like a Garwian," Bikelian reported. "Maybe it's on the other side of the planet." "Admiral, Premia Central Command acknowledges," Wutru relayed. "They claim the Garwian diplomatic ship left 3 days ago with all personnel aboard." "There you go," Zistalmu said briskly. "Looks like Thrawn managed to extricate himself without any fuss or drama. Now, if we can say our farewells and head back to the Ascendancy." "Captain, please ask for clarification," Aralani ordered. "We want a list of all the personnel on that ship. I also want copies of all transmissions to and from the Garwian before it left." "What makes you think they'll have all that available?" Zistalmu demanded. "Or we'll give it to you if they do?" "Captain?" Aralani prompted. "Message delivered," Wutruo confirmed. waiting for a reply. "We've got movement," Baklian cut in. 5 small ships breaking orbit toward us, and another 8 patrol ships rising from the surface. Make that 9 from the surface. "Patrol ships?" Zistalmu asked, clearly confused. "What are they doing?" "You should read the Defense Force's after-action reports more closely, Syndic," Aralani said, eyeing the small ships assembling between the Vigilant and the planet below. "Small fighters are a line in the dirt, a warning that the defenders are serious." "Yes, I understand that part," Zistalmu growled. "I'm wondering why they think 14 fighters constitutes any kind of threat. Do they expect them to scare us away?" "Of course not," Aralani said. "But a couple of wings of fighters isn't as provocative as a group of full-class warships would be. That makes it easier for both sides to back down if neither really wants a fight. And if the intruder does want one, it's not so much of a loss to the defenders if the fighters get blown out of the sky." "But we're not going to do that, are we?" Zistalmu asked, his voice dark and ominous. "Not unless we're attacked first," Aralani said. "Captain? Any word on my request?" "Central Command says they don't have that information," Wutro reported. "They say they have to refer me to the diplomatic service. It trusts they're doing so? So they say." Wutro pointed at the tactical. "Looks like they're working into a lens formation." Aralani nodded. Or at least 13 of the patrol ships were. The 14th was moving forward, ignoring his companion's more cautious stance. "Octrimo, that fighter on the extreme starboard seems to be spoiling for a fight," she said. "Start drifting us toward him. Nice and easy. Don't make it obvious." "You think that's him?" Wutro asked. "We'll know in a minute," Aralani said, checking the distance. The patrol ship was almost in range now. Another few seconds. Abruptly, a double flare of laser fire blasted from the fighter squarely at the Vigilant. "Hit on starboard ventral weapons cluster," Baklian reported tersely. "Low power blast, no damage." "Acknowledged," Aralani said. Zistalmu inhaled sharply. "What are they doing? I thought you said they weren't trying to be provocative." "Targeting sensors have kicked into rapid record mode," Wutro called. "Modulated laser fire coming in," Baklian began. "Thank you, Senior Commander," Aralani cut him off. She'd known what Thrawn was planning as soon as he opened fire on the sensor cluster and had hoped she could slide it past Zistalmu without him noticing. No such luck. "Modulated how?" the Syndic asked. "Admiral? The laser is modulated how?" "I'm not sure yet, Syndic," Aralani hedged. "We'll have to see what the computer makes of it." "Let me guess," Zistalmu said, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "That's Thrawn, isn't it? And he somehow adapted the fighter's laser to transmit a message. Is that it?" Aralani mouthed a silent curse. So much for keeping the Syndic in the dark long enough to bring Thrawn aboard. So much, too, for keeping Thrawn's favored method for surreptitious communication secret. Up to now, only she and Thrawn had known how he'd managed his communication with the Garwians during the Leoin pirate attack on Stivik all those years ago. He'd obviously planned in advance to pull the same trick here, knowing that Aralani would recognize it and be able to extract the message. What he couldn't have anticipated was Zistalmu inviting himself onto the mission. The question of Thrawn's possible interference in that particular incident had long since been forgotten. But all it would take was Zistalmu putting the pieces together to drag it back into the light. And with Zistalmu and Thurfian both out for Thrawn's blood, that could be a serious problem. Right now, Aralani had more pressing matters to deal with. 2 of the VAC patrol ships had broken out of their lens formation and were pursuing Thrawn's ship. So far they hadn't fired, but someone had clearly figured out that the rogue fighter had been commandeered and was hoping to stop it. Meanwhile, off to port side, 2 much larger VAC warships had come into view around the planetary rim, moving steadily toward the Vigilant. And then, around the planetary rim to starboard, a much larger ship had appeared. A Nykardan warship. "VAC warships moving toward portside flank," Wutro called. "Close combat distance in 2.3 minutes. Patrol ships moving up in defensive lens. Combat distance 90 seconds. "Picture coming through," Baklian reported. "On sensor 2. Aralani looked at the specified display. The data Thrawn was sending seemed to be a schematic of one of the VAC patrol ships. She smiled tightly. Ashematic, moreover, with all the weapons and targeting sensor systems marked. Everything she would need to take all the fight out of them without loss of life or serious damage to the ships themselves. "Prepare lasers," she ordered. "Target patrol ship's weapon sensors. Target very carefully. I don't want any additional damage." "Just a moment," Zistalmu cut in. "Are you mad? You can't launch an unprovoked attack." "It's not unprovoked," Wootro said. "One of them fired on us, remember?" "That was Thrawn." "So you've suggested," Aralani said evenly. "Until that's been confirmed, we operate on the assumption that the Vax have attacked us. Captain Wootro, pick 3 of the patrol ships and fire." "Belay that order," Zistalmu snapped. "I forbid any action. You will prepare to withdraw." "Incoming," Bicklin snapped. 4 heavy cruisers coming in from hyperspace behind us." "Acknowledged," Aralani said, feeling a sudden sense of unreality as she gazed at the display. They were heavy cruisers, all right, arrayed in a diamond combat formation. Only they weren't Vax ships, or even Nickerden. They were Lio'oin. "Yaw turn, 180, she ordered. "Stand by lasers and spheres on new targets." "Lio'oin flagship is signaling, Admiral," the comm officer called. She touched a switch. "To intruder." A Lio'oin voice came over the speaker, its miniseat clear and precise. "You are threatening the peace and safety of the Vac Combine. Leave immediately, or be fired upon." "Admiral," Zistalmu began. "Quiet." Aralani cut him off as she tapped her comm switch. "This is Admiral Aralani aboard the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet ship Vigilant," she said. "We mean no harm to Primea or the Combine. One of our people has gone missing, and we're here to inquire about his whereabouts." The words were barely out of her mouth when all 4 Lio'awe ships opened fire. "Barriers up," Wootro barked. "Target enemy lasers. Prepare spheres." Aralani added, her brain spinning as she tried to figure out what in hell was going on. What were Lio'awe even doing here at Primea, let alone attacking a Chiss warship on sight? And then, suddenly, she got it. Damn the Nicardin anyway. "Spheres, fire when ready," she bit out. "Target all Lio'awan ships, concentrate on weapons clusters." "Enemy lasers impacting on the hull," Wootro reported, her voice tight but controlled. "Barriers diffusing about 80%. Spheres on their way." Aralani nodded. Enough plasma sphere impacts, enough ion bursts eating into the electronics, and the attacker's ability to continue fighting would be neutralized. But it would take half a dozen shots to sufficiently disable any one of the ships, and there were 4 of them for her to deal with, and the Vigilant had only a limited number of spheres available. Unless, "Continue targeting weapons," she ordered, searching the displays. Thrawn's patrol ship, there it was, coming up fast. The 2 Vac fighters that had been in pursuit, she noted, were falling back. Apparently, they didn't want him badly enough to charge into a combat zone. "Perfect. Octramo, what's our best course out of here?" she called. "Wait," Zistalmu protested. "Now when we're actually attacked, now you want to run?" "Shut it," Aralani said. "Octramo, best exit route is portside," Octramo reported. "But that vector will take us into close combat range with both 3 and 4. The Lio'oin ship designated as 4, Aralani noted, being the one farthest to portside. "Time to gamble." "Concentrate sphere fire on 3, she said. "Octramo, take us out on your vector." "On 3? Zistalmu put in. "But 4's closer. If I have to tell you again to be quiet, I'll have you removed from the bridge," Aralani warned. Zistalmu sputtered something but fell silent. The laser fire from the 4 Lio'oin ships was increasing as the Vigilant headed toward the open space to the Lio'oin formation's left. Attackers 3 and 4 began moving sideways to block the Chiss escape, though 3's efforts were now being slowed by the cascade of plasma spheres hammering into its hull. But with the flanking fire from 1 and 2 continuing to blast away at the Vigilant's starboard hull, even just a single Lio'awan in front of the Vigilant would make escape problematic. Presumably, the Lio'ai and their Nicardin masters knew that and were counting on it. Unfortunately for them, they'd all forgotten about Thrawn. The Vac patrol ship shot past the Vigilant on full power, ducking through the scattered laser fire from the Lio'awan ships, charging straight toward Attacker 4 with lasers blazing. Aralani held her breath, waiting for the Lio'awan to respond, wondering if she and Thrawn had read the situation correctly. They had. For those first crucial seconds, the Lio'awan didn't return fire, having apparently been ordered to shoot at the Chiss warship, but avoid combat with Nicardin and the local Vac forces. She could envision the frantic calls from the Lioaoi to Premia, the questions running up the chain of command, transferring over to the Nicardan warship, the furious corrections coming from the general in charge, possibly heading directly to the Lioaoi, possibly having to go the reverse path so as not to give the Chiss confirmation that the Nicardan were even involved. And as the farce finally played itself out, the Lioaoian ships belatedly opened fire. But it was too late. Thrawn's surgical attack had already destroyed Four's combat ability, tearing into the ship's heavy laser sights and blinding their missile fire control sensors. For a moment, the other three Lioaoi continued to fire, but as the Vigilant drove through Four's shadow, their weapons went silent lest they hit their comrade. Thrawn's fighter finished its run and turned toward the Vigilant, and jerked suddenly as a final laser shot sliced across its aft thrusters. "Hit on patrol ship," Wutruo snapped. "Tractor beam," Aralani snapped back. "Bring him in." "On it," Wutruo confirmed. Tractor engaged, locked, bringing him in. "Starboard spheres, one final volley," Aralani ordered. "Keep them back." "Vac warships moving up," Buckleyan warned. But it was a waste of effort, and everyone knew it. The Vigilant would be far enough out of Premia's gravity well in 20 seconds, and would have Thrawn aboard in 30. The only ships close enough to stop them were the Lioain cruisers, and thanks to her and Thrawn's combined attack, they too were out of luck. "Skywalker Cherry, get ready," she called. "She's ready," Zistalmu's wife said. Aralani scowled. "Skywalker Cherry?" she asked pointedly. "I'm ready, Admiral," the girl's voice came back. Her confirmation was quieter and maybe a little more tentative than Nana's, but it confirmed to Aralani that Cherry was indeed ready. Aralani had had other caregivers insist on speaking for their young charges instead of letting them speak for themselves. She'd never liked it then either. "Good," she said. "As soon as we confirm Captain Thrawn's aboard, we'll go." "Captain Wutruo?" "Almost there," Wutruo said. There was a small clunking sound as the shrapnel from a pair of disintegrated Lioain missiles bounced off the Vigilant's hull near the viewport. One final, desperate, useless attack. "Aboard," Wutruo confirmed. "Crash webbings deployed, confirmed capture, outer hatch closing, outer hatch sealed." "All right, Cherry, we've got him," Aralani said. A long road, with a blaze of fire and noise at the end of it. She could only hope Thrawn had found everything he'd come here for. "Take us home,"